Hi, welcome and welcome to this product review. We're going to look at a product which is called Freeplay TUF. Freeplay is a company and you can see it down here. TUF is the name of the radio, suggesting that it's rather tough. I don't know. It's meant for survival situations or scenarios. Just going to show you the box on the outside, and I'm not sure whether you can see, you can read what it says on the box. It says AM, FM and SW radio. So AM stands for amplitude modulation or medium wave section. So that's from 500 kilohertz to 1.6 megahertz. A lot of local and international radio stations are on that band. So at nighttime you tend to be able to hear radio stations from quite a long distance away. Nationally and internationally as well. FM is just regional radio stations, and then we've got the shortwave band as well, and that's quite interesting. Shortwave, you can listen to radio stations from all over the world at various times of the day, so it's something to consider, worthwhile, especially for survival radio and for extreme situations. Okay, what else have we got? We've got an emergency mobile phone charger, which is included in this radio, and we're going to test this. We've got an LED flashlight, so flashlight is in the radio as well, so it's ideal for camping or being in the outdoors if you need to go somewhere. It's supposed to be splash proof. You can recharge it by Dynamo or by solar panel or by USB connection. So depends what you've got available. You've got an audio line output, which can be quite useful, and no batteries needed, it says. This can be a good thing or a bad thing as well. Okay, let's unpack this radio, see how it comes. So this is a box they send it in. Freeplay, I think, is a company, and they specialize in products which are all about solar products and little generators and low power stuff and so on. That's what the box looks like. What else have we got on the box? We've got a little bit of information. You can see the pictures right at the box, which sort of highlights all the advantages. So you can see a little crank here. So that's the Dynamo operation. You can see the inputs. So you've got a USB output for charging your phone or other devices you may have that work on a USB. You've got a mini USB port to charge the thing up, to charge the internal battery up, and you've got an audio out as well, so you can stick your headphones in there and you can silently listen to radio, especially if it's a dangerous situation you're in. And you've got a flashlight as well, a little LED torch here, which is integrated. Makes sense as well to just stick it in, so that's there. Okay, let's unpack the whole thing, see what we get. First of all, we've got the instructions. I've opened this up before, but I thought I'll let you have the joy of opening it up. I'm just sort of going to try and hold it in a way that you can see this. There's quite some interesting stuff you can get from the instructions here as well. I don't know, sometimes they don't tell you the truth, and they tell you all sorts of stuff, but not necessarily what's really going on inside the box. Especially when you get products from China. I'm sure this one has been built in China as well, but some of the products, they are the manufacture is all a bit shoddy and a little bit sort of not quite up to scratch. Anyway, let's have a look what it says on here. So first of all, it says in there it's got a 350 milliamp nickel metal hydride rechargeable battery. So that's in the radio. So we've got 350 milliampere hours, not milliamp, milliampere hours. It's not much, I have to say. For nickel metal hydride, you tend to get far higher capacities, so I'm quite surprised that they've only got a fairly low capacity in there. When you charge it with the solar panel, it charges at 5 volts and 25 milliampere, so I assume that's at full sunlight. So you can roughly calculate how long it would take to charge up the battery. So if it's 25 milliamperes and there are a couple of losses, so in ideal conditions, it would be about 10 hours, maybe 10, 20 hours. So probably you would need about 2 to 3 days daylight hours, yeah, like depending where you are, to charge up the whole radio right to the brim. Yeah. So again, it's not really that good. It's probably okay once the battery charged up, or you've used the crunk to just leave it outside and to keep the battery topped up. So if you ever need the radio, you can rely on it that the battery is full, it's fully charged. The biggest nightmare, I find this all the time. I've got other radios which I carry around with me. I'm going to show you some of them which I carry around, and I'm going to do some comparisons with that one as well. This one is a Yaesu, yeah. It's a Yaesu VX3, so I'm into amateur radio, so it transmits and receives as well on amateur radio frequencies, a 2-meter band and the 70-centimeter band. But you can also use it as a receiver, so it's got like radio receivers in there, so you can go to all the radio bands, and shortwave as well, so you can listen throughout the whole shortwave band. And it's just a hobby of mine, so if I get a bit bored, I just check out what radio stations I can find on shortwaves. And it's actually not bad. I was quite surprised that with a little antenna you can pick up you can get quite reasonable reception. So it's worthwhile to consider this one, especially if you're into amateur radio. I recommend this one very highly. I've compared it to others as well from some of the Chinese competition which produce radios that just look like this one, but hasn't got quite the functionality. So you pay about 4 or 5 times as much for this radio, but it's worthwhile the money. Okay, I've got another radio as well to draw a comparison, and that's this radio here. It's just a box standard. I got it from a supermarket for about £10. So that's about, how much are we talking about? Probably about 10, 15, no, a bit more, about $15. So I got it from a supermarket, and the reason why I got it is it's got all the shortwave bands, all the broadcast bands on this radio. And we're going to do a comparison with the TUF and then just a cheap supermarket, £10 radio. I think it was actually less, it was about £7, so that will make it about $10. And we're going to do a comparison as well, just see how they all fare with one another, listening to the same shortwave radio station. So it's going to be quite a lengthy product review. I hope you will enjoy it as well, but if you want to buy this radio, it's worthwhile. Okay, what else does it say on the instruction sheet? I'm sure you can't see it very well. I'm just going to read it off you. So it's got charging. It says here the TUF radio can be charged in 3 different ways, each independently capable of charging the unit for normal use. Turn the handle at about 120 RPM, so that's revolutions per minute. So that means you're supposed to turn the handle about 2 times a second. Place the radio in the sun with the solar panel exposed to the sunlight. This charges the battery. Once the battery has accumulated a charge, the radio may be turned on. Or the third way is insert a standard USB cable into the port on the rear of the radio and charge the radio from an external source. So that's a USB mini connector. Okay, it gives you some data here as well about what they say, and we're going to test this out whether they're actually telling the truth or not. The radio will play for about 20 minutes per minute of winding at medium volume. So that means if you wind it up for about a minute, you can listen to the radio for about 20 minutes. So that means if you wind it up maybe for about 3-4 minutes, or let's say, be a bit generous, if you wind it up for about 5 minutes, it should play for about an hour. So again, if it's an emergency, you don't worry too much. You just want to find out what's going on. If all the electricity and everything is gone, this might be your only link to the outside world. So you want to know what's happening. And I'm sure you don't mind doing a little bit of, turning the crank in order to get some power. The light will shine for about 30 minutes per minute of winding. So that's interesting as well. And for about 20 hours on a fully charged battery. So if the battery is fully charged, for example, you left it for 3 days in the sun, the radio, or that's what it would probably take to charge it up, or you start winding it up for quite some time, you get about 20 hours of light out of it. It's good to know as well, so you know at least if you charge it up using the USB port, which takes about an hour or so, that you can that you can use it. It says here about 2 to 3 minutes of cell phone talk time are achieved per minute of winding. So that's important as well. So the whole idea with this phone is you've got your cell phone charges via USB port, you can connect it to this radio, and you can charge it up. And so you should get a few minutes of talk time per minute of winding. So we're going to try that one out as well, just to see whether it's possible. So if that is all true, it would actually be quite an interesting emergency scenario. Okay, tell you what else I've got. This is a battery for, I don't know whether you can see this, light conditions are not the best. Probably should have done this video outside, better light. This is a little battery for my Yaesu radio, and it's completely flat. And I'm going to give it a go. So if I put it into the radio, nothing is gonna happen. So I'm going to wind it up for about 5 minutes and see whether I get enough juice. Just to show you, this is a charger. That is the USB lead at the end. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to test out whether the radios actually be able to generate enough electricity, enough energy to make this work. Yeah, we're going to find out whether we can make an emergency call using our little amateur radio, our 100 amateur radio equipment. Okay, I'm going to unpack it a bit further, so stay with me. So the thing comes out, yeah. And here we've got the baby. I have to admit, I had it out before, so I'm not letting you have the joy of unpacking something brand new you've never seen before. That's what the thing looks like. Let me just tidy this away, because we don't need the packaging now. And it's been charged as well, so I did charge it up before. When I first got it, gives you also an idea how big it is. So let me just, what do you know? You know how big a mouse is, an average mouse. So that's my mouse, yeah. And that's what the radio is, yeah. In some pictures it looks really big. So for example, I'm showing, I've got it on my computer. When you look at it on a computer, it looks actually really, really big. But it's only a tiny little thing. So don't be surprised when you get it and you think, oh, where is it? Where's my radio? Okay, I got the radio and the battery was totally empty. Yeah, so couldn't even power it on. So obviously I was quite keen to get it going. So I used the crank at the back and I started winding it up. Let me just get this out. So that's the crank. And again, it doesn't matter in which direction you turn. I've got some generators, if you turn in the wrong direction, nothing happens. Most of these generators produce AC, and they've got some sort of rectifier in there, and this one must have got some sort of full wave rectifier. So it doesn't matter which direction you turn, it'll charge up in both ways. Whatever's more comfortable for you can turn. So they say you have to do about 2 turns per second, so let me try and do this. So that's about 2 turns per second, and you can hear the sound of charging. And you'll be surprised if you do this. I did this for about 2 minutes. It actually is like a bit of a workout. Yeah. And what they do is inside this unit, they will have a couple of gearboxes, and then they'll have a tiny motor or a tiny generator, AC generator, and that thing will be turning around at a huge speed. And it'll generate a voltage well in excess of 5 volts to be able to charge the battery really, really fast. I'm not quite sure how much volts they chuck into it when you turn it at about 2 times a second. But it does actually charge quite fast. And it was totally flat, nothing was happening. I started cranking it up for about 2 minutes. And I did get some results out of it. So it did work. It did work. Okay, let's have a look at this radio and see what else we've got. We've got the solar panel right at the top. You can see this. It's fairly small. They say 25 milliamps at 5 volts. And that might be about right. I've got a solar panel which is about 10 times the size. Generates about 100 milliamps at 12 volts. But it sounds about right. The solar technology has gone a lot further. It's moved on quite a bit, and even for this little bit of surface area. And again, watch my finger. I mean, this is not much bigger than my finger, isn't it? It's about 2 size my fingers, and they get about 5 volts out of it. So my point is, don't rely on the solar panel for running the radio. The way I would look at it is just like a nice top-up. So if you keep it outside in the sun or on the windowsill or something, you know that whenever you need it, should there ever be an emergency, it'll work. Or what else have they got? So if you're en route, they've got this nice handle up here. So you can see, nice handle, so you can just maybe put it on the back of your rucksack and keep this exposed to the outside whilst you're walking along. But the loudspeaker is right underneath here. I'm not sure. They say it's splash-proof. I'm not quite sure whether the loudspeaker is made of plastic or it looks plasticky to me. So I may be able to withstand some water penetration. I haven't tried it and I'm not sort of looking forward to try it either. I don't want to destroy the radio. Okay. Right. When we turn it around, let me just turn the handle down and put the crank back in again. So it locks in like this and it's out of the way. You've got a torch on this side. The torch is actually okay. It's just like one of these LED torches. It's not sort of overly amazing. You don't get like sort of a few hundred meters of light or whatever. But it's enough, yeah, it's enough. So if it's really, really dark and you need to see, the torch is enough. You've got your controls on this side. So this is your torch button. And then these are all your radio controls, yeah. You've got a watch as well, so you can put your little watch in there. And you've got a, I don't know whether you can see this. I'm going to try it, but okay. I'm not sure whether you can see this, whether it's clear enough on the camera. You've got some battery indication. You've got a little battery indicator light that's up here. So you can see whether the battery is fully charged or it's not fully charged. But as I said before, it's only 350 milliampere hours, which isn't much. And it suggests that they've just got 2 small battery cells inside, maybe 2 or 4, I don't know. Battery cells, sorry, 2 or 3 to make up 5 volts, battery cells inside this radio somewhere. My criticism is I can't get to the battery cells. So if these batteries ever die, and obviously if you use it regularly, and also with time, they don't last forever, even though the radio might be in perfect condition, but it's useless pretty much. Yeah. So I don't know. I had a look as well, and I thought, how can I get into this thing? Maybe if you take these things off, yeah, I don't know. There's some pads here. There might be some screw of some sort or another, and then you can open it up. I don't know. Yeah, I haven't looked at this, but it would be nice to be able to service it. Should this radio ever, or should the batteries, after a couple of years, go down? Okay, what else? Let's have a look at the antenna. This is the antenna. It's not much. Can you see it? Yeah. Let me just put it down a bit so it's within the picture. All right. This is the antenna. Yeah. It's not big. It's not much, but if you, especially for shortwave reception, it's enough for FM. Yeah, and they seem to have a little bar. Yeah, one of these ferrite bars inside the radio. It seems to work not kind of amazingly well, but it seems to work on AM as well, or medium wave. So I can pick up stations, and we're going to check it out in a moment. When we check it out, I have to make sure all the computers are turned off to reduce the amount of interference they do, and we'll do this. Okay, so that's the radio. Very small, so it's very easy to carry. It gives actually quite good audio. And let me turn it on. I mean, I'm sure that's what you are waiting for. Let me just turn this one off. So I turn that radio fully off, and then you can appreciate the sound. So at the moment it's on AM. Let me just see whether we can get an AM station. Probably not fair because I've got lots of computers on here, and it doesn't go too well. And if it's like a real emergency, I wouldn't worry too much. Okay, there's one radio station here. I'm doing this from England, and it's, I think it's called Absolute 1215. Used to be Virgin 1215 and something else. But they tend to have a good signal. Oops. Okay, that's an AM radio station. Bear in mind the bandwidth is only like a couple of kilohertz, so the sound is not that good. That's the speaker it comes out of, and it's actually it's a very small speaker, but it's quite potent. Whilst I was driving my car, I had this on the dashboard and I was just playing around with this and had it turn on, and it actually did work. Yeah. Okay, let me go to FM and give you a better sound. So this is shortwave, and now we are on, that's the time, now we are on FM. That's BBC. Okay, I'm gonna put it onto, I mean, since the camera is recording it and they've got like automatic gain control and all sorts of stuff in there, it's probably not too faithful a representation of how this sounds and what it sounds like. But it's, let me tell you, it's not bad. So that's just UCB. I've got one of those micro transmitters for the car. So I picked it up on another computer, and it's United Christian Broadcasters. What you find as well is it's very power saving. So if I use this button and I try to change the frequency, this light comes on, and you can see what's happening. And for example, if I change the volume, you can see the level. It goes from 0 to 30 to give you an idea where you are. And then it stays on for some time.
Very warm welcome back to the show here.
And then after some time it goes off, and it makes sense as well. And this is to preserve the battery and make sure it lasts longer. Bearing in mind, you don't have that much juice to play with. In the description, it tells you something. I think the battery, once it's full, you should be able to listen to the radio for about 4 hours, I think. If I get this right, let me just check this. It says 6 to 8 hours, yeah, on a fully charged battery. So that means if you keep it to about half the range, which, let me just put this down. Maybe about here, so 14, 15. So that's about 6, 7 hours. That's what they say. I don't know whether this is true. We're going to check this out, and we'll see how this works. Okay, now the next big question: survival radio. Do we really need it? Do we need a radio with a crunk so you can wind it up? Let me just turn the light on as well. You can see that's the light. Probably doesn't mean an awful lot. It would be much more interesting in the dark. You can see the light. It's just room lighting here, so it won't be quite as bright. Okay, what about this radio? Yeah, this radio, I paid £29 for it on eBay. Some prices were a bit higher. I think I had a look in America, and they were about somewhere between $40 and $50. And in other radios, they are only about, especially from China, they're about $10 or £10 to about £20. But the reason I went for this radio is the shortwave facility. Again, if I look at the instructions, let me see. Maybe you can see it as well. On shortwave, it goes from 3 to 22 megahertz. Yeah, 3 to 22 megahertz, and that covers most of the shortwave broadcast bands. Not all, but most. Mostly the useful ones where you get some activity. There are no gaps in it either, so it goes anywhere between those two frequencies on the shortwave band. Let me see whether you can see this. Let me just try and... I don't know. Can we see this? I'm just trying to give you a little bit of a list. These are the shortwave broadcast bands. We've got the 90 meter bands at 3.2 megahertz. Then we've got the 75 at 3.9, and then the 60 meter band at 4.7, 49 from 4.9 to 6.2. And that's actually quite active here in Europe. So you do get a lot of radio stations to broadcast within that band. We've got the 41 meter band from 7.1 to 7.6 megahertz, 31 meter band, 9.2 to 9.9. Again, it's very active. And what you find, the lower frequencies, like 3 megahertz, to let's say to about 9, maybe 11 megahertz, they're very active at night time, and the higher frequencies So from about 13 or maybe from about 9 to 25, 26 megahertz, they're very active in daytime. Yeah, so there's a difference between those two bands. And so it depends on what time you're listening to. Like in the middle of the night, there's not much activity on 15 megahertz, 17 megahertz, or 21, or on 13 megahertz. But you will find some activity on 11 megahertz, 9 megahertz, and then all the way down to about 2 megahertz. Yeah. And then the AM band, the shortwave band becomes very active as well. If you buy this radio, it's very important that you buy the radio for the correct region, for the medium wave band, for the AM band. In America, you've got 10 kilohertz between the channels on medium wave, and in Europe, you've got 9 kilohertz between the channels on medium wave. So if you buy an American radio for Europe, you'll be able to listen to some of it, but you can't tune in because it just goes up in channel steps very precisely. And if you buy a European one in America, it's the same thing. Yeah? You don't hit all channels, and you're sometimes right in between channels, and you'll struggle listening to what you want to listen to. Okay, so this is the radio so far. That's a TUF radio. As I said, I'm going to try and make a comprehensive review. So survival radio, let me just go back to this. Survival radio is, and here we go, let me just zoom out. Yeah, survival radio is certainly useful, I believe. Yeah. It gives you a good idea of what this radio can do and where the limitations are as well. When I was trying it out, this radio, I got reasonable results. I was quite impressed how well it performed on shortwave and the stations you could hear with a little antenna. If the antenna is not good enough, all you need to do is just stick a 4 or 5 meter long piece of wire, just a random piece of wire to the antenna, and the reception will go very, very well indeed. And that's always a trick with shortwave. Just stick some wire on it and take the insulation off one side and twist it around the antenna, and you'll get very good reception. It seems to operate very well on FM as well. The length of time the battery works is a little bit debatable. I wished it would be a little bit longer. You would have maybe on a full charge 10, 20 hours of radio time and not just 4 to 6 hours. Yeah. The torch is okay. Yeah. It's not super amazing. It's literally just one LED with a mirror and a lens to focus the beam a little bit. But again, 20 hours on a full charge, if it's true, it's not too bad. The solar panel alone is not enough to run the radio, I don't think. But it is good enough to keep the radio topped up and to keep it charged. So if you keep it in the sun, you can guarantee that that the battery is full at any one time if you ever need it, and you can run it from that. The radio itself, the packaging, it feels like a rubber. It's not as soft as a rubber. It feels a bit sort of rubbery, but it's some sort of plastic, but it's not very hard either. It certainly feels well protected, that's for sure. They claim it's splash-proof, whatever splash-proof means. So, in other words, if a bit of water gets into it, it shouldn't be the end of the world. And one thing I haven't really shown you yet is, let me just open this up, is those connections here. Yeah, that's pretty rubbery. It feels very rubbery and seems to seal it off quite well, or reasonably well. I wouldn't submerge it in water, but it seems to, maybe the splash-proof thing, if a bit of water gets onto it, it's not the end of the world. And you've got your sockets here. That's your audio. That's where you charge it. That's a mini USB stick, and that's your USB port where you can. Let me see. Can you see it? That's a USB port here where you can charge your mobile phone. Or I'm going to try to charge this battery with a crank. Okay, that's it so far. The next one is, how long does the battery last? I've got a watch here, and this is not going to be the real time, but it's just to give you a rough idea. So I'm going to put it at 12 o'clock. You can see this. This is at 12 o'clock. I'm going to keep the radio running, and the next shot you will see the time and when the battery's gone empty. Okay, thanks for tuning in. Hope this little talk on the TUF radio you are enjoying it. Maybe not. Maybe it's far too long for you. But anyway, I want to give you a comprehensive view. That's the main thing. There are a few videos out there on YouTube which don't give you a very intensive view, but we're going to test it. We're going to test it right down to the core, including the shortwave capability. What can you hear with that thing? We compare it to other radios as well.
They look backwards in time.
Okay, we have now been playing the little radio for, let's have a look at the time, for 3 hours and 15 minutes, and it's still going. What I find with the radio, let me see whether you can see this. I try to light it up a bit.
They look backwards.
Okay, I'm just trying to...
Times that we have lived through, times that
there you can see the battery, and it's gone. Just let me just try it again. Turn on the light.
we don't necessarily make memorials for those times.
Here you can see it. So we've got about 2 bars on the battery indication.
The question
And
as Christians,
what happened is, just zoom it out a bit.
what do we do
What's happened with the radio is that, let me just turn the sound down a little bit.
a time when life isn't easy?
So we've been running it at sort of average sound. What's happened is it was charged up and it was on 3 bars on the little battery indicator. Let me see, can you see this?
We do have families.
There's just 1 bar, which is gone down, and we've been playing it for 3.5 hours. It's on the 2nd bar. Obviously, these bars don't indicate an awful lot, but I would suggest it probably works. It probably keeps a promise of what has been suggested by the manufacturer, that it'll play for up to 6 hours on 1 charge. If that is true, it suggests that the power consumption of the radio is somewhere around 80 milliamps. About 80 milliamps, maybe a bit less, a bit more. Again, when you look at the solar panel, it supplies 25 milliamps. So with the solar panel in the sun, at full sunshine, probably it extends the time as well a little bit. So it seems to. I tried it out, and let me just see whether I can do this. If I've got light here, I can just show you what happens. So I'm just gonna zoom in. Can you see this? So I'm having a little bit of light which is now shining on the solar. You can even see it, like with the internal light going off. And the little battery bar just goes up and down, and that indicates that it's actually charging with the sunlight. And that's just from the table lamp, from the desktop lamp. I tried it out. I mean, this is a halogen bulb. I tried it out with just an LED bulb, which is just like white light. There's very little heat, but it didn't work at all. So couldn't trigger it. Couldn't trigger the charging cycle. But it just indicates or suggests that the solar panel is very reactive to infrared light as well. It gets quite hot, this bulb. So there's a lot of infrared radiation coming from that one as well. I think it's about 60 watts or something. Okay, so that's just a little update. Okay, we're gonna play the radio a little bit longer, see how long it takes to turn it right down, and we do a little bit more testing with that thing. I know the product review is quite long, but if you're interested in it, it's maybe worthwhile to check it all out. Again, the next call is going to be on the film, the next bit after here. But I'll be waiting a little bit longer until the battery goes down completely and the radio is gone, and we'll see how many hours it takes. Okay, it's dark, and I can try and give you an idea of how good the torch is. Okay, you can see this here. It's obviously a camera, so it's not that good. So that's just a little LED light. Yeah. And it's just to show you that it works as well. Okay, let's go back again. And turn it up a bit more. Okay, so we're going to carry on listening to the radio. Okay, see you in a couple of hours and see how far the battery's gone down by then. Okay, we are now looking at the radio, and the radio has now been running for, this is a watch, we've got 5 hours and 40 minutes from a full charge. The radio is still working, the torch isn't. So when I turn on the torch, there's nothing happening, it's just going down, and on the display is fainted out. So we can assume, let me just zoom in. We can assume that the battery is now as good as empty. So that is an operating time for 5 hours and 20 minutes. And the last couple of hours were running at full volume. Right, we've got the clock here. Let's just have a look at the clock, and here we go. Just zoom out a little bit more. And what I'm going to do now is, so this is a radio, yeah. It's a bit dark in the room now, so the camera doesn't pick it up too well. And first of all, I'm going to put the antenna in. Then I'm going to get the crank. You can see it here. Let's have a look. That's a crank. It's right in here. You need to put it out. And I'm going to start winding it up at 2 revs per second. So it's about 120 RPM. I'm going to wait till 12, and if everything is right, 1 minute should give me about 20 minutes of radio time when that thing is empty. And clearly it just switched off. It gave up the ghost. And yeah, so we have got this. Okay, we're going to make a start now. And again, we can turn any way around. So it doesn't matter whether we turn clockwise or anti-clockwise. It should be about 2 revs per second. Now it's quite some strength required to turn this round. It's not easy. And the reason is to do with the gearing. Yeah. The gearing is slightly strong. So you really have to apply a little bit of strength. Not too much, but a little bit of strength to turn the thing around. I tell you one thing, I wouldn't want to do it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 20 minutes. It would certainly could be felt. I would feel it. Here we go. So we've got 5 more seconds. Okay, so we should have 20 minutes of playtime and 20 minutes of 30 minutes of light. Okay, let's turn the light on. So the light you can see is on. I turn it off again, and we've got 2 bars. And let me just turn this light away. Okay, so watch the time here. I'm going to turn it off. And we can see how long we can listen to the radio. So we've got 10 past 8 at the moment on this watch. And we'll wait for 20 minutes. Okay, the radio just stopped working. Let me just zoom in. And in. Don't know whether you can see this. Yeah, it's just charging again because the light is falling onto it, but it just literally switched off. So we had about 10 past 8. We cranked it up for 1 minute, and how many minutes did we get out of it? We got just short of 15 minutes, about 12 minutes out of it. So the prediction of what they said is not quite true. Let me just see. So I'm gonna put some light on it. See if you can turn it on again. So it's working again. And what I'm doing now is just putting some light on it. See how many minutes we get out of it. When I turn the radio off, it'll pretend and tell me that it's charging. So switched off now. And now, let me see whether you can see this. Yeah, here we go. You can see that it goes up again, it goes up. So it pretends to charge, and probably does charge a little bit, but I doubt whether it's going to be the 25 milliamp it advertises, not with this light here, but maybe just a few milliamps, just enough to get the display going and to pump a little bit into the radio. Okay, not quite as advertised. So we've got about 10-15 minutes for 1 minute cranking, but to be fair, it was pretty empty before. Nevertheless, we can get some power out of it. So in an emergency, you can still make the most of it and just get the latest news by cranking it up a bit. And obviously, in daylight hours, you will have a little bit more. I expect from, you know, the battery capacity and everything that the radio, I think I mentioned it before, I think it's drawing somewhere around 80 milliamps. Maybe a little bit less. Yeah, so even when you run the sun, and you get your 25 milliamps or 20 milliamps, if you keep it running for about an hour or so, you can probably get half an hour playtime out of it when you've got very good light conditions around. I would also think if you run it in the daytime and you keep the sun exposed to it, that instead of using 80 milliamps, you'll only use 60 milliamps. So the time you can play the radio is going to increase quite a bit. So it's a very interesting device indeed. Okay, I'm going to do the next test. The next test is I've got, let me just get this. I'm going to use this as a charger. Now we know that the battery is empty, so nothing is going to charge with the battery in there. So we've got this device here. Yeah, this is just a charging unit. Yeah. Then we have got, where's my radio? I've lost my radio. Right. Yeah, we've got the radio. We've got this radio here. Yeah, it's just a Yeezy radio at the moment, just to show you. There's a full battery in. Yeah, so it's on the same frequency. Yeah. I'm now going to put an empty battery in. Let me just switch it off. So it's switched off. And I'm going to put an empty battery in just to make a proof of concept to show you that the battery I put in is dead as a doo-doo. And we're going to see whether we can actually get this thing to work. So that's a reasonably good battery. It should hold the charge. But we're going to run some tests here. So I'm going to try to turn it on. And it's nothing. It's just nothing there. It's dead. I tried to measure it before, and there was no juice in it. So now it's dead. Let's see whether we can, proof is in the pudding, whether we can get something out of it. So I'm going to stick it in here. Yeah. And then when I look at this unit here, right at the back, I've got this rubber grommet. I can't get it out now. Now I've got it out. I'm going to stick my thing in here. Have I got a lump of any type? I don't think I've got anything here. So anyway, we're just going to try it. Okay, so again, I was a bit worried. I thought if I turn the crank around that it might get sort of tied up with this wire here, but it isn't. Okay, here at the front we have to... what it says is it has to be... Okay, I'll do it again. Yeah, we've got it here. I don't know whether you can see this. I'm just going to try and zoom in. It says there's cell. Oops. Can you see this? It says there's cell. I have to press the band button a few times until it gets cell. And that's now supposed to charge. So I'm going to zoom out again. Let's zoom out. And now we're going to try it. I'm going to charge it, let's say, for 3 minutes. So giving it now. Right, do it now. And I don't know what's going to happen. I haven't tried this before, so we will see how it goes. But as I said, it's quite a bit of a workout. So at the moment we are just charging this battery, and we are trying to put some juice into this battery. And we'll see whether it works. If it works, it's actually quite interesting, because that means you can use this little hand generator in conjunction with a radio. So for example, you could have, if you're in America, you've got the, what are they called, GFRS, so Family Radio Service. You could have some of those radios, and they're not that good for long distance communication, but they're okay for up to a mile. You could use them and still stay in contact across your property or across town. And if you ever get in trouble, you could do this. So we've done 1 minute. I'm just going to check. Yeah, this still says sell. Yeah. So that's 1 minute. Yeah. And I tell you one thing, I can feel it in my arms. It is a little bit of a workout. And I tell you honestly, I wouldn't want to do it for 15 minutes or any length of time. I did sort of a rough calculation. If the 20 minutes were true, it would probably take about 15 minutes to half an hour of cranking to get this battery fully charged. I wouldn't fancy doing it. Again, if it's an emergency, you don't worry too much about this. You just do what you have to do to try and get yourself out of an emergency. But it's nice to have a facility where you can do this. Okay, we are now in the 3rd minute. I'm just going to do it for 3 minutes, and then we're going to see whether we get some life into this battery. To be fair, I can't wait for the 3 minutes to be over. Half a minute to go. And we're going to give it a few seconds extra because we checked for the cell indication whether it was still on a little bit earlier. And it's getting hard. It's really getting hard. I can feel it. And it's just the way the gearing is done. Okay, so we are done now. And I can feel it very much. Okay, let's try and check the battery. So this is a battery. Oops. This is the radio. Yeah. So just see whether it fits together. Would be nice if it works. And it works, yeah. We've got about 3.5 volts. And that's actually quite impressive. I don't know if you can see this. It's only one little battery light. But bear in mind the battery was totally dead before. So basically what we can say and prove that 3 minutes charging we can do this. We can charge it up for a little bit. Okay, let me see whether I can actually transmit on it. I'm going to go to an amateur radio band. I have to say I've got an amateur radio license, so I can do this legally. So I'm on an amateur radio band. Yeah, it does it, but it goes down. So if I turn the power down to low power, yeah, it does, and the battery doesn't collapse. So normally, though, let me just try and zoom in. Yeah, so you can see, so I'm pressing the carrier and you can see that the battery still works. When I go to high power, which is about a watt, it's struggling. Yeah, it still transmits, and I would imagine if it's just for an emergency, it would actually work. Yeah, you could make an emergency call on low power. It does it without a problem, so the display doesn't sort of weaken, the light doesn't go down, and I don't get like a warning light as well. Problem with these radios is that when the battery is down, when the battery is finished, they just collapse. Yeah, they just collapse, and nothing else happens. So they just turn themselves off. Again, I have to say I'm impressed. So I can charge one of these batteries, and all I spend is about 3 minutes. I would imagine if I set myself to it to do another 3 minutes or so, I could probably get, I don't know, maybe get some decent performance out of this radio. Okay, so just let me just go out again. So I'm just gonna disconnect my little USB lead. And so I guess I would say if this works with this radio, I would say and suggest that it'll work with a normal cell phone as well. Yeah, it'll work with that one as well. Yeah. So that's this one. The next shot is going to be about reception capability. So we've proven so far we've got about 5 hours and a bit with this radio. Okay, we're now doing the shortwave test. Let me just turn the audio on. Okay, so that is the TUF radio. Bear in mind, you can see the antenna as well. It's not very tall, just a tiny. Okay, we're going to turn it off. Oops. Okay, let's try this one here. And the antenna is a little bit longer. So it's about to be expected. And we're going to turn this off. And let's try this one here. That's, again, the user radio. Okay, let's put the volume up. Okay, so okay, we've got the the Freeplay radio on a field test here. Let me just try and get this from all angles. And again, if I press the power button, I can scan on shortwave from band to band. So I can okay, so you can see I can scan through all the different broadcast bands. Let's have a look. We've got about 5 o'clock now. So the bands which should be active is probably about 9 megahertz. So I'm going to press the volume button. Okay, let's scan to the next one. All I need to do is just click on the up button and go to the next one. Just keep it depressed for us.
It's ending restrictions on the amount of rum and cigars that American
So that's actually quite good. So we are just in the 9 megahertz band and we are picking up quite a few radio stations. And that's just a short part of the shortwave band. Let me
Cuba had to wait 6 months before entering a US port.
try the next band. Okay, that's the wrong button. The power button is actually the band button. Let's go to 13 megahertz and see what we get. It's picked up some weird station. Okay, so this is just with a tiny antenna. Again, the loudspeaker is right here. So it seems to be a Middle Eastern station. We are here in England, so that's quite a distance.
Confucius, and that is what he who gave the Chinese people the idea.
So that's a Chinese station. Okay, so we've done this. Let's have a look at medium wave. So we've got the normal FM band. So I'm just going to go to the FM band just to show you that this one works as well.
This is noisy.
So you can see at the front as well, it operating in the wild. That's the radio station. The transmitter is not far away from here. That's on FM. And that's on medium wave on AM. Again, we can just scan, press this button.
No doubt about that.
How so?
I mean, in this case, we have had it's been
And again, that's on
very
AM
long
as well.
process dating back to 2011, and we've had an original conviction, an appeal, and then we had the interesting scenario where we.
Okay, let me just get the volume down. So I've got the volume buttons here, and I can just turn the volume down. It's very quiet now. Just to sum up with this radio, it's really good on shortwave, actually quite surprising for the size it is, and I find that digital radios using a phase lock loop system, they don't tend to be that sensitive, but this one actually is quite sensitive. And when you look at this tiny antenna, and I've just placed it on top of the car, so let me just show you from a distance. So you can see the tiny radio there, and you can see my car, it's just on top of the car. And so you've got the earth of the car as well to sort of interact with the antenna, giving a little bit of a better reception. The main point I'm making is it's quite an amazing small machine for what it is. I paid £30 for that. I think in America they cost about $40, $50. So not bad at all, I have to say. Okay, I've done a little bit more testing since the last shoots on this radio, and what I found is that the battery seems to hold up. You can charge it relatively fast. It's only like a fairly small battery in there. I think it's just a couple of 100 milliampere hours, so it's not that huge, metal hydride one. A little bit of a warning as well with metal hydride, they tend to lose charge quite fast. So if you turn the radio off and you just leave it somewhere, the best thing is just use a solar panel and leave it in the sunlight, and it'll keep it topped up all the time. If you leave it in a cupboard away from the sun, they will over a couple of months most likely discharge. I haven't tried it out yet. I've seen this with other metal hydride batteries, so it's worthwhile to just keep them in the sun charged up. And you can see as well, it's very cloudy here, and you can see, let me see whether we can zoom in on the charge display. Yeah, you can see this, just a little battery there. It goes up and down. So it's still, I don't think, it says when that the solar panel can provide about 25 milliamps. I reckon in these conditions now, it's probably less than a milliamp or something, but nevertheless, it's a tiny weeny bit going in, and if this happens all the time, it'll keep the battery nicely topped up, the rechargeables. Okay, that's all.